Hey man, before we jump into this episode, I wanted to take just a moment to tell you about our Facebook group. If you're new to Wolf and Iron, you may not have heard about this thing. Maybe this is the first podcast you've listened to, but we've got this awesome group of guys over on Facebook, and we're having some great conversations. You can get there by going to wolfandiron.com/the group. And here's the deal. We don't let everybody in. There are a couple of questions you guys need to ask when you first get there, and that helps us to determine whether or not you're a good fit for the group. And we like to keep the caliber of our discussions high. We have fun over there. You can't get guys together and not have fun. But I'm telling you, I've not been in a group like this before, and I'm just really excited to invite you guys over there. wolfandiron.com/the group. The other thing is our Wolf and Iron store. You can get there by going to store.wolfandiron.com. And this store is actually a lot of fun for me because we're just getting it kicked off. It's a different kind of entrepreneurial thing than I've done before, although it's probably more like your typical sort of entrepreneurial thing. We've got a sticker pack over there that you guys can purchase. We've got some t-shirts. We've got some prints and things of that nature. My book is over there, The Guy's Guide to Pocket Knives. And check this out. You can save 15% off of your purchase with the code FEEDTHEWOLF. That's all one word. So head over to the store, check out what we got going on, store.wolfandiron.com. Now, on with the show.
Duty, honor, country dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
The destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals.
Now, we are the masters of our fate.
Howdy, gents. Welcome back to another episode of the Wolf and Iron podcast. I'm your host, Mike Yarbrough, founder and curator of wolfandiron.com, and I'm glad you're here. Men, I am really excited about this interview that you're about to listen to with Bas Rutten. Bas is a former MMA fighter, really, really well respected in that sport. He's also a UFC Hall of Famer. And the guy is just tough. I mean, he is just tough. But you might know him as some different names, depending on where you've kind of seen him. My family and I first met Bas, or first became familiar with him in his shows with Kevin James. He did a movie called Here Comes the Boom that came out a few years back with Kevin James. He's the big guy that's from Holland. That part of his story is kind of true. We talk about that in the episode. That trains Kevin James' character, Scott Voss, how to fight. And you can see him lately acting alongside Kevin James as well in the show on CBS, Kevin Can Wait. And so maybe, as I mentioned that, this is starting to ring a bell. You're starting to go, oh, I know this guy. I know who you're talking about. Not only is Bas just a really, really dynamic guy in terms of personality, but also in his career. I mean, the guy's gone from professional MMA fighter to basically an actor on TV, making people laugh. And so this conversation covers a lot of ground, but I also found out some things that I absolutely love about Bas I didn't know before. I kind of suspected. Sometimes you can tell, but I wasn't sure. And it turns out he's a solid Christian guy. He's got a real passion and a real heart for God. And so we kind of get into that a little bit towards the end of the episode, but I know you guys are going to get a lot from this. We have good discussions on fighting, kind of what it's like to get into that, why it's still necessary for guys to do in some kind of form, even if it's in self-defense classes and things of that nature. We dispel some myths about how to handle bullies. We talk about getting into acting. We talk about following your dreams. We talk about just making connections. We talk about just doing things, not really knowing where it's going to lead, but just following what your gut's telling you to do. So it's just a fantastic conversation. But I want to say this. I have had allergies for the last 2 months solid. And so this, along with a number of podcast episodes, I'm just going to apologize in advance for, or maybe in retro. So if I sound a bit nasally, that's why. I also wanted to say thanks to Bas a second time, if he's listening to this, because for some reason, the recording of this episode stopped really at the last question. And I about had a heart attack because I thought we didn't record any of this, but it turns out it was really just the last question. So I asked Bas, hey, would you mind just coming back on? Anytime works for me, just so I can ask you that last question again and just wrap this thing up professionally. If not, that's okay. But he did. And so I really appreciate him taking the time to do that. Okay, here we go. Mr. Bas Rutten, thank you so much for being on the Wolf and Iron podcast.
You're very welcome.
Well, first, man, I want to say just thank you, not only for being here and talking to me today, but also because you have brought a lot of laughs into my family's home. So, I think we started watching, we first found out about you with Here Comes the Boom, and we were like, well, who's this guy? We've never seen him before. He's hilarious. And then we saw you show up in a couple of other things, and then now you're on Kevin Can Wait, with Kevin James and Aaliyah Ramini and just a great cast there. Really funny show, but we laugh at you quite a bit, my friend. And so I just want to say thanks for doing that. Thanks for being yourself and bringing that to everybody.
That's what I love. I really love to do that. Entertaining and having a good time. So this job right now, actually the sitcom, that was my dream job. 20 years ago when I arrived in America, literally my first interview, I remember they asked me why I came to America. And I said, well, for the UFC, of course, but also, I want to do something in movies, whatever it is. If it's acting or you're a fight choreographer or a stunt guy, whatever it is. I just like to do something in movies. And he said, movies or TV? I said, if I have a choice, I said TV. Why? I said, well, because it's a bigger medium. You reach more people. And he said, okay, so you want to do like a That Way's a Badass show? I said, no, I would love to be on an American sitcom. And he goes, comedy? I go, yeah, because I used to do comedy martial arts shows in Holland.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fun thing to do. And it's been 20 years in the making, but we're here, and I got it. So it's awesome.
So that is awesome. So, I mean, you're living out your dream. That's amazing.
Everything I've done is really my dream. Everything. I've never, what they always say, if you love what you're doing, you never go to work. I literally have that. We had 432 episodes or 431, whatever it was, for Inside MMA. Yeah. I never, and I swear this, had one episode that I thought, what, I'd rather stay home today. Every single time I was looking forward to go there. So loving what I do.
So, when I was thinking about putting this interview together, I thought I'll start with the fighting stuff first and kind of do the backstory, and then I'll get into the acting. And I thought, no, I want to reverse this actually, because that's where I know you from. I kind of did the reversal, right? I met you as an actor first, and then kind of backtracked that into your fighting experience, the MMA and UFC and all that stuff. And so I want to start with that, but for the guys who don't know you, they're kind of like, who's this Bas guy? Give us just a little bit of your backstory about, how you got started with martial arts and maybe a little bit of how you came to America and all that.
Okay. I'll try to put it in a nutshell because it's quite a bit of a story, but I was a very sick kid. I had a horrible skin disease, which covered my face, hands and arms and everything. So I had to wear special gloves for it, long sleeves, turtlenecks, all that stuff. And I had asthma as well. Asthma combined with serious asthma attacks. Like every month, I would be a week in bed, every 5-6 weeks actually, and not able to eat even because I couldn't breathe. So it was a hard going up, and especially the bullying. Because, if you have a skin disease, you're a leper, they call you all kinds of names. So that ignited something in me, and I realized that after watching a Bruce Lee movie, Enter the Dragon, that if I would be like that guy, which was Bruce Lee, then I think the bullies would stop. So I started training. Took a long time for my parents to finally allow me to do it because they're very conservative, they're the opposite of me. They're very calm, relaxed parents. And started training, and everything went fast from there. Within months I was beating up brown belts there, and then I got very confident and got in the biggest street fight with the biggest bully in town. Not the biggest street fight, but the biggest bully in town, who always called me names. And this time I shouted something back, and he was with like 6 of his buddies, and I heard him laughing, and I looked back. We were on bicycles, and I saw them turning around, and they started chasing me, and that's where I told myself, no more, this is it. So I put my leg on a stand, and I waited, and it was the weirdest thing ever. It was literally one shot. I hit him once, and the guy was knocked out. He was the biggest bully. I go, really? And broke his nose, though, in the process. So the problem was that the police showed up, and they took me, of course, my parents. You see, that was I confirmed for them that martial arts was violent. So they took me off right away. But now I tasted what it was to be a fighter. So now I became the protector of all the kids who got bullied in school. This kid got bullied, we beat the crap out of him. And that's how it started. And, the bullying stopped for 95%. I know that everybody always says, you have to talk to the bullies. No, it's not working. They cannot understand normal language. The only language they understand is the language they dish out to others, and which is violence. And unfortunately, it is like that, but it stopped immediately. Nobody pretty much believed me anymore. Now, from there on, I realized that I had a feel for it. I started Thai boxing, did really well in Thai boxing, lost a match though, and then I kind of got spit out in Holland. I won 12 fights by knockout, and then I lost the fight, which I never should have taken the fight because I was drunk when I said yes to the fight. And I found out 2.5 weeks before the fight that after 4 years of not training, that I had a fight coming up, and I still said yes. But I was. So needless to say, I lost that fight. Of course I did. And but the reaction from the Dutch audience, because I'm from Holland originally, was so weird. I mean, suddenly I was the worst fighter, and that really did something to me. I said, I'm not going to fight for these people anymore. And then I started doing martial arts shows, comedy shows, a lot of acrobatics, like a lot of flying and backflips and somersaults and all that stuff. And on one of these shows was a guy called Chris Dolman, and he stopped me. And Chris Dolman was fighting in Japan for an organization called Rings. And he stopped me and he said, listen, I see you do all these crazy acrobatic things, and I remember you as a fighter. You were like this crazy explosive guy. Are you interested in doing free fighting? That's what they called mixed martial arts at the time, free fighting in Japan. And I asked him about the rules. I worked out there a few times. Long story short, I had a tryout. I knocked the guy out in a tryout because he tried to knock me out, so I returned the favor. And that was it. The Japanese people who were there for the tryout, they were pointing at me, and they said, we won him. And September 93, that was my first fight in Japan. Won that fight by knockout, and that's when everything in my life changed. I mean, literally on the street, next day, people were bowing to me, and I mean 50%. What's going on? And then I realized I was in the newspapers, and I had a victory jump. I don't know why I did it. I think it was just because I was extremely happy. I knocked the guy out in 43 seconds, and I jump up in the splits to every...
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And that became my trademark. And one of the pictures in the newspaper was badass because she saw me hanging in the splits and my opponent knocked out on the ground. So I go, whoa, man, that is so awesome. And that's why the people knew, that I was a fighter, and then it started. My whole career started. I started winning there, got more titles. I got 3 world titles. Then I went to the Ultimate Fighting Championships because I beat already some UFC champions in Japan. So they asked me to come over there. Then I became the UFC heavyweight champion there. And then in 2015, 2 years ago, I got inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. And while I was doing all that, I started being a commentator. Then I had a show on TV, Inside MMA, a mixed martial arts show. It was a live TV show every Friday night on Access TV. That's Mark Cuban's channel. And, movie parts came here. They're a little TV part, and slowly but surely they became bigger and bigger. And then here comes the boom. That was my first real big supporting actor part. I had some leads in the past, but they were like B movies.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest one for me. And but the way I got that movie, because I know Kevin James for a long time already. We'll talk more about that later. But he told Sony he wanted me in the movie. They didn't want to do it, for what I understand. It's what he told me, because he said, yeah, he's a fighter, he's not an actor. And I recently, just before that, I did a short comedy which called Kingdom of Ultimate Power. You can find this actually online, Kingdom of Ultimate Power. And it won.
Okay, we'll into that, yeah.
Yeah, it won first prize at the film festival in New York, short film festival. And Kevin gave that DVD to the people from Sony. He says, why don't you watch this? And then they came back and they said, okay, yeah, we would like to have him. And actually, if he can be like that guy, that would be really cool. So that was it. And then I started doing it. And now, the show, my show Inside MMA got canceled last October. And they were shooting, we were shooting live on Friday nights. And Kevin Can Wait is a show that shoots Friday in front of a live audience. So, Kevin wanted me on the show a few times, but I could never do it because I had my own show. And when I got canceled, 2 weeks later, I did the first episode. They enjoyed it. They asked me back 3 more times. Then the season ended. And this season, season 2, I came back and I did 17 episodes this season. So now I have 1 more coming up next week.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it's going to get renewed and then up to next season.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And I know the guys that are listening to this are just thinking like, what a crazy ride, that your life has been up to this point. And just amazing, really. I mean, just all the different, you're a very dynamic person. You got a very dynamic personality, but you've also had a very dynamic career path. And, really just amazing. So there's a lot of places we can go from this. I did want to say though, so, when you beat up that bully when you were a kid, I say beat him up, you punched him one time, knocked him out, and you became the defender of the school. Is that when you realized that you were really a fighter at heart, that's really what you wanted to do?
No, because in the time there was no money, nobody was boxers made money, but we didn't know anything about kickboxers. I mean, there was no money in that. I was just happy I finally could defend myself, and now people, I have respect. Because if you get bullied on a daily basis, I tell people words are way worse than a beating, and I never got a beating. I was always a good athlete. I was very skinny because, of my asthma. But, my whole family, they're all athletes, and so my dad was a great athlete. My brother was a great athlete. He's actually a better athlete than I am, my brother, but he became a lawyer. But this guy was amazing. He could have had the same career. So, I was just happy that finally I found something that I could defend myself and others who were also bullied. So, yeah, from there it went. And, when the free fighting came, that was the first time that I literally asked him, I said, wait a minute. So he explained me the rules, Chris Dolman at that show. And I said, and they pay you for it, right? And they go, yeah. I said, yeah, sign me up. I mean, it's amazing. Now I can make money with something that I love to do. Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you guys and you, Bas, my first kind of fighting story that I remember. So I was a kid, similar kind of story, playground, bully kind of thing. I guess I was in about, I don't even know what grade I was in, maybe somewhere between second and fourth grade. So I wasn't very old. But I was on the swing set, minding my own business, and this pretty little redhead girl comes up to me and says, hey, this guy, I think his name was like Trey or something, Trey wants to fight you. I just kind of wanted to see what this is all about. So I walked over to Trey, and it was at the place in the playground where like the teachers couldn't really see what you're doing. And we're kind of behind like the side of the school sort of, and all these kids are crowded around, and I'm just going to go talk to the guy because I don't know what the deal is. I think he'd been picking on me for some time, maybe saying some stuff about me. I don't really remember that part. But he's bigger than I am. I was a small guy at the time, and he's taller than me. And he starts swinging and stuff like that. And I'm actually doing pretty good. I'm holding my own. I don't know if I'm throwing any punches yet, but I'm kind of moving and dodging and doing pretty good. Well, I get to a part where I'm standing up, and he's sort of a little bit disoriented because I've kind of outfoxed him a little bit. And I get a tap on my shoulder, and it's like something in the movies. I turn around, and it's the redhead girl, and she slaps me across the face. And I don't know why. I don't know who she was or what the deal was, but she just wanted part of the action, I guess. Well, she slaps me, and then I turn back around, and he socks me one. And somehow in all of this fighting, I must have got a punch in, or he hit his head on something, because the next day he shows up. He's got a black eye. I look totally fine. I'm pretty sure he won the fight, but it didn't matter because the next day he had more bruises than me. And so, but after that, Trey and I we were cool. We weren't like best buds, but it wasn't like Trey wanted to come back the next day and knife me or something like that. You know what I mean? And I think that's a lot of the fear that people have with the bullying thing that's just going to escalate and escalate. And I think there are places where, if it's, maybe if it's teenagers, you're getting into the 15, 16 plus years old. Guys do take things a little bit more seriously. And you can really hurt somebody, but kids, I say let kids be kids, and sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to, stand up to them.
It really is, and you see it in fighting as well, in professional fighting, guys who don't like each other after the fight, that's it. The hatchet is buried, because they fight. It's a very primitive thing to do all the way from the beginning. That's how you settled problems all the way back. We're talking about a long time ago, but I think it's still in our DNA. People just enjoy fighting. It's always what they say. If you watch a tennis match at Wimbledon and the finales, and then suddenly a fight breaks out, nobody watches tennis anymore. Everybody's going to watch the fight. That's how it goes. People
That's right.
Always attracted.
Yeah.
To that kind of stuff. So yeah, and I'm telling too, and you could defend yourself, but there's a lot of other kids who cannot defend themselves, because the bullies, what they do, they pick the weak kid, and preferably they do it also with a group. And as you can see, even the girl was involved, So for us, at least we could have done that. But for a kid, who's a really skinny kid, and maybe he doesn't have motoric skills or whatever it is. It's very hard for a kid like that. So that's for those kind of kids. That's why Bas Rutten was there. Yours truly. He took care of those.
That's right. Their hero.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Right.
I took Taekwondo as a kid and got up to black belt. And then at some point I discovered like guitars and girls and went away from it. So I could have had an experience like yours, but I went a different direction. But I would much rather get in a fight with somebody who knows what they're doing, or I'd much rather see a fight between someone who's been trained in martial arts, because I know they're not going to seriously hurt the other person. Most likely they know when to stop, in most cases. And I know, like, you were a bouncer for a period of time, right? And you've done some other things. And so you've had to handle yourself in real events, not just in the ring, but that's real enough. But in events where you don't know what the guy's going to do, right? You don't know what you're going to be up against one night after the other. What's that like? I mean, as far as going into, having the mindset of, and the training to take somebody down, but not take it too far. I mean, do you find that as a, valuable skill?
I think it's all about confidence, whether it's in a street fight or in a professional fight. I think everything is confidence. I think the guys who knock somebody out and they give them 3 more shots, they're just very insecure. They're very nervous and they're afraid that they keep going. It's almost like these people who got stabbed 40 times, because they keep on moving into guys and they're freaking out and they keep on stabbing, but I think if you're confident and you know exactly where you are, I never did that. I knock you out. I'll look at you and see if you're knocked out. I will, if you're still awake and you're looking at me, I'll give you a look like you are more. But and your eyes will tell me if you want or not. And then if it's over, I walk out. Why would you do that? I never got that, because if that's where you can get hurt. What people don't realize is when the UFC came out in '93. I was fighting in Japan before the first show. I was in September, and the first UFC was November, I believe. But I had Ken Shamrock. He was on the same card as me in Japan fighting. And he was telling me that he was on this new thing. It was in the cage. They're going to lock it. There's no referee. Nobody can step in. Anything goes. And I go, dude, are you sure you want to do that? He goes, so you don't think it's cool? I say, yeah, I think it's cool, but you need a referee. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, if somebody knocks you out, and that guy who just knocked you out decides to give you like 6 more, 7 more elbows or whatever he does, that's brain damage. That can really hurt you for the rest of your life. I wouldn't do it. He says, you wouldn't do it? I said, no. If there's a referee who can pull him off, I would do it. And then finally, thankfully, that after the second show, I believe it was, Joe McCarthy told the UFC, he says, listen, somebody's going to die. And so it's either I'm going to be allowed to step in, or I'm going to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And he was, at that time, he was such a powerful figure already, because he established a lot of the rules and the things that he had, that they could not go without John. And they said, okay, let's do that. Because John, what happened was the corner was allowed to throw the towel. And there was a fight with Tank Abbott. That was maybe show 3 then, or some 2 or 3. And Tank Abbott they beat the crap out of Tank Abbott. And Joe McCarthy's looking at the corner to throw the towel. Guys throw the towel. The guys would literally turn their backs to John. And he goes, something is going on. And then finally, Tank got knocked out and they stopped the fight. And he went to the corner. He says, why didn't you guys throw the towel? And they said, well, Tank told us that if we would throw the towel, he would beat us up. So that's the moment that he said, okay, something needs to be done. And that's when he changed the rules.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, you got to have guys like that are really looking out for the sport of it. That want to make sure that this isn't something that's just there's a certain brutality to it, obviously, and people are drawn to that. Like you said, people want to see a fight, but at the same time, we're not wanting to see lethality in each show or something like that. And that's not something that actually is corrupted. It would corrupt people's conscience, I think. Yep. To just view it purely to see how brutal it can get, and that's definitely not where we want to go. I want to back up a little bit to the acting stuff, or maybe move forward, however you want to think about it in terms of where your career is. So give us the story about, I'm interested to know, how did you meet Kevin James and how did you get into that kind of world? Because I'm thinking about that as being like a very tight-knit kind of thing. And for the other guys who maybe have a dream of wanting to get out there and get into, whether it's be on stage or be on TV. How did you break into that circle?
Well, first of all, I understand it's a job. So I'm unlike other guys who think that they're going to watch a movie and they know how to be an actor. And so when I came to the States, within 3 months, I went to the Beverly Hills Playhouse. It's an acting in Beverly Hills school. And I started taking acting classes. Because if you're there, you're going to figure out positioning for cameras, where you have to be, what this. It's going to be good for acting. It's going to be good for stunts. It's going to be good for anything. So that's how I started with it. Preparation is the key to success. I tell everybody, make sure that because once the chance comes, you better make sure that you're ready. Because imagine that they offer you a big part in a movie and you mess it up. You're never going to be in the movie again. Nobody's going to take the risk. So I knew that I had to focus on that now. And I have to say also that a lot of it is, once I started doing commentating, I think that helped me tremendously as well, because it's live. And, you can't mess up. And you do mess up. And once you mess up, you start learning how to cover those mess ups up. But, you're training your mind. And it's a good thing to have to do it at a live show, because the pressure is on. It's like fighting in training, sparring in training. And if you're a good fighter in training, that doesn't mean at all if you're a good fighter in fighting under pressure. I know guys who beat the world champions in training, but they can't fight themselves if they do it under pressure. You see what I mean? It's a big leap doing something under pressure or not. So anyway, Kevin James, I know him over 20 years now, because I came to America in 97. Kevin was roommates with Joe Rogan at the time, just before that. And they used to watch Pancras, the organization I was fighting for in Japan. It was they sent it out, broadcasted it on pay-per-view to America. They would watch these fights, so they knew about me. So when he found out, this was the first season of The King of Queens. When he found out I was in America, he told his manager, he says, listen, I really want to meet this guy. So I got a phone call at the gym. And Kevin was unknown. I mean, he lived in a one-bedroom apartment that he shared with his brother. That's where I met him for the first time, and it was across the Sony studios in Overland. I remember that, because I used to live in Overland as well, in Los Angeles. And we just became friends, and I never, overstepped it. I always let everything come from people. So finally he said, hey, you want to do an episode? You want to appear? I said, cool, so I did that, and then they liked it, and I appeared another time, and then another time, and slowly but surely. And then when his show stopped, he started putting me in all his movies. I was a Mall Cop and Zookeeper, Mall Cop 2. You see, he started putting me in these parts, and I think he was just testing to see what I could do and how far I could bring it, and then boom, here comes the boom came. And then now, of course, for me to be on, on the show Kevin Can't Wait, it's insane, man. I'm so stoked about it, but I don't want people to think that it just happened. It is, of course, I do have the job because I know Kevin James. Of course that is true. If I didn't know Kevin James, I would have never had the job. But what I tell people is, like, if you're a fighter and I have the power to put you in the UFC, well, you better know how to fight, because if you don't know how to fight, you're going to get knocked out, you see? And that's what I always tell people. Make sure you can do the art before you go in. Yeah, once an opportunity comes along, don't mess it up. Jump in and make sure that you're able to actually do it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I can just see that applying to so many different areas in life. There's actually a scene that came to mind in Here Comes the Boom where, Kevin James is basically like, hey, I want you to train me. Scott Voss, I think is his name, his character name maybe. And he's like, I want you to train me, right? And you're like, okay, let me just throw you in the ring. Let me just throw you in there. Because people that are serious about what it is that they're doing, they don't have time to waste. That's just the reality of the world, right? So, if you go on a set, if you go into a job interview, if you go into whatever it is, you've got to be prepared. And, if nothing else, people are going to test you to see if you have what it takes, or if you have the gumption, the wherewithal, if you got the raw materials maybe to work with, that's better than nothing. But absolutely be prepared. Train for the job that you want to have,
That's it.
Absolutely believe in
that.
Yeah,
and have a backup plan all the time. Always have a backup plan.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's the guys that go out to Hollywood, they bank on, I'm going to be an actor, that's what I'm going to do, and they really don't have a backup plan. And here's the thing that people don't realize, your backup plan, while you're working in that backup plan, you're learning things about yourself that are actually going to help you be prepared for whatever it is that comes next. So, whether it's, busting tables or, working fast food or whatever it is that you think is maybe beneath you or is not what you want to do, there are going to be experiences that you take from there, if you're willing to, that are going to help you become the kind of person that you need to be when the big opportunity comes up.
And it's a great thing, but like waiting tables, for instance, I do with my prayers. I'm a super religious person as well, but I memorize a lot, whether it's English, Latin, I constantly memorizing, and it helps you so much for acting as well. And that's why if you're waiting tables, every day there's new specialties. Sometimes they come and they say, oh, these are the specialties of the day. And right away when somebody looks you dead in the eye and they start talking, he's probably an aspiring actor or, a guy who also wants to act on the side because he memorized the whole thing. Sure. The guys who look on the paper the whole time, they're probably not the actors, they're just the waiters. See what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. There's opportunity everywhere. So I got a question to ask you. This comes from my wife, but I'd ask it anyhow because it's a great question. And when she heard that I was doing the interview, she's like, "Oh, you got to ask him like these 100 questions." And I said, "Well, I don't have time for all those, but I got a couple." So there's this. You play a part in Here Comes the Boom, where you're basically a guy who's been in the States for some time, but you're trying to become a legal citizen of the U.S. And she wondered, did that resonate with you at all? Like that particular story. I mean, I know you kind of told us a little bit about coming over here, but just the idea of becoming an American citizen and playing that role, did that at all resonate with your own story?
Yeah, no, 100%. That's why for me it was it was good to play for me. When everybody, all my friends, they would tell me, "Man, you just played yourself," and I go, "Thank you," and I go, "What do you mean, thank you?" Well, I remember my first acting coach. He told me that at the moment when you start doing movies or TV, at the moment people tell you that you just play yourself, that is the biggest compliment you can get, because that means that you're really comfortable in yourself and that you're playing. So I really enjoyed that. I'm sorry, I lost the question. What was the question on? Because I wanted to spin it into that.
Yeah, no, it was just basically, did that resonate with you in your own personal experience of coming to the U.S.?
It was exactly that, because I was a fighter who had to stop because of injuries. Of course, I became world champion, and thankfully the injuries came later in my career, and I got all my titles. But Nico was a guy who just before he got on the big scene got a big neck injury, and he could never fulfill his dream. And we were at the moment also in the process. Well, actually, we just became citizen, I think. Like I did. When I had to give the answers to the questions the wrong way, the citizenship question, I knew all these answers because we just went through it and our whole family became citizen. So I knew about the process. I used to be a fighter. I came from Holland, so everything was fitting perfect for me to play that part.
That's awesome. She's going to be happy to hear that. So kind of going back to the fighting piece a bit, we're going to jump around a bit here. So, I know you started with Taekwondo. I think I got that correct. I saw that on the Wikipedia page. So tell us a little bit about how you went from what you went to next in terms of just the different styles that you studied. And is there one that you found, I guess, most useful and just practical self-defense? Taekwondo, I started with that. Then I only did that for like 4 months or so because that's when I knocked out the bully. But then when I left the house, my mom and dad, I started doing Shintai karate. Shintai karate was made by a guy, Roland Johnson. And this guy was a really good Taekwondo guy, and he was extremely explosive. He was the kind of guy who went to championships, but also he always got disqualified because he would knock out people, which was not allowed, of course, in Taekwondo. But he had that powerful style, and I was very fortunate that I met him because he was technically very sound, very precise. I mean, the guy, what he could do was amazing. I did all these martial arts shows. I did with him. We did the shows for TV, for European TV, Dutch TV, so we had a really good time. So that was my basics. But then I really started exploring because there was no punches to the head. And there were no knees and there were no low kicks, I remember. And I go wait a minute, I heard about low kicks. He says, it's simple. You simply have to check them. So I started Thai boxing and I realized that it's not that simple because they were beating the crap out of my legs because I did not know how to play. Yeah, it's okay when I know it's going to come. It's easy to check. But if I get hit in the face 3 times before a kick, it's a different story. So when I came
came back to him. I said, no, it's a different thing. And then I start sparring with him, and I start hitting him with low kicks. And he goes, wow, okay, I think we should add this to this sport. He says it's very effective. So he was a really good guy who didn't mind, who took constructive criticism and actually used it. So he started changing his sport as well. Now, that sport, Shintai Karate, also had some throws in it, but it was very primitive, It was in the early stages. I soon realized that I wanted to start competing in Thai boxing. So I did still Shintai Karate. I started competing in Thai boxing. Did really well in that until, like I said, I lost the fight and suddenly everybody spit me out. It was this crazy thing. And after that, I started training with another guy, Wim Vlieger, who was a really high degree taekwondo guy from Holland. And I got my second degree with him. And in the meanwhile, I was also training with my buddies who were Kyokushin guys. And we were just doing that on our own. And I've never been promoted, but we were at second degree level. And when you read on my Wikipedia page that I have a fifth degree, that's because it was an honorary fifth degree that I got from John Blooming, who is the highest right now because Mazoyama passed away, and he's 11th degree Kyokushin. And that was for the reason because he was in Japan with me a day before the fight, before I had a fight, and we were walking with a whole group of fighters in Japan, and suddenly we hear the promo for our organization. We heard this big voice saying, hybrid wrestling, pancreas. And we're looking and we see this giant screen on the wall, like the biggest screen I've ever seen in my life. The wall is filled with the screen. It was insane. This was 93, so it was a long time ago. And the first thing we saw was me knocking out my first opponent. And we go, oh, this is awesome. So we're watching the preview. And in that preview, I see a guy sitting in half guard. And for the people who don't know what it is, it's hard to explain, but he's sitting in a certain position, and he's going for a leg lock, which is called an inverted heel hook. He grabs it and he falls back. Now, I was very early in my submissions. I was a striker, and I didn't focus on submissions, but I look at the 11th degree Kyokushin guy behind me. I go, hey, that's a cool move. I should try that one time. So the next day, I'm fighting, and I'm in that position, and I go, you know what? I'm just going to try it. So I grabbed the heel and I fell backwards. Now, since I never did it, I had no clue how much pressure I will put on his knees, knee. And normally this is a move that will dislocate your knee. So as soon as I fell backwards, my whole body weight is in it, and I hear his knee pop, which is what I think. So I'm letting go right away, and everybody's freaking out. The referee freaks out, the opponent freaks out, but he gets up and he feels his knee and he says, no, I'm okay. And we look and we go, this is weird because I heard something snap. What we didn't know was that his shin bone was snapped now, half. Oh, geez. But it was still attached. So the fight continues, and he gives me a kick with that leg, and I just check it. And you see his leg wrapping around my leg, because the shin bone was broken. He went down. And that's when the 11th degree, he said to me, listen, he gave me his fifth degree. He said, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Yesterday, you see the move on TV. You tell me, hey, it's a cool move. And now you win a fight with it the next day. He said, so that says something about your talent. And he gave me a fifth degree. So that was cool.
Man, that's nuts. Yeah, I mean, so some of the guys, obviously we're speaking to a big audience here, and some of the guys who are listening to this, the vast majority of the guys who are listening to this are going, yeah, that's awesome. I don't want to get hurt. But I do, I really want to promote martial arts, self-defense, and that kind of stuff. So give us some advice for the guys that are like, okay, I don't want to get in MMA. I don't want to get in UFC. I want to become more confident about my ability to defend myself, to defend other people. I want to be the boss on the playground, beating up bullies if the time, calls for it. What's something that they could get into? What would you recommend for somebody to jump into where they're like, they would get an immediate, like when I did Taekwondo, it was really cool, but it's a lot of kicks, which is honestly, it's a challenge as you get older. If you haven't been stretching, it's going to take you a while to get into where you feel comfortable, like kicking over your head and that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't recommend that, but is there like a style that you would recommend for the guys that are wanting to get involved with their kids, teenagers, or something along those lines?
Yeah, it's nowadays I always tell them right away, do mixed martial arts. Just, like for instance, my gym, we have a lot of students, but we have maybe only 12 fighters. We have over 300 people there. So for us, it's not. I'm not focusing on pros. I'm focusing on making good fighters and making them solid. And mixed martial arts is variety. I mean, you almost don't even have to do weights anymore. Once I started ground fighting, I started literally growing from ground fighting because it's constantly pulling. It's like you're working out. And then you're standing, and that's when you strike. That's where you're pushing, so to say. So I always say that is the best, to go into a full contact sport. And nowadays, mixed martial arts became its own sport. Before, you had to go to a boxing club, you had to do jiu-jitsu, and there Thai boxing, you have to kind of mix it and put it together yourself. Now you go to a gym and they will teach you everything at the same gym. So for full contact and to spar at full contact is the best thing there is. I'm, second degree taekwondo, second degree karate, but I'm telling you also, if it's not full contact, it's not going to really do a lot in a street fight. Yeah, against the person who never trained, you will win for sure because they never trained. But if you find a guy who maybe boxed for 6 months only, you're going to probably lose because he's used to connecting and hitting you and going hard. Now, when I say going hard, this is also, you just need to find a good gym. My gym, I have never, ever, and I'm doing this for the last 11 years here in this town, there's never been an injury in my gym when I'm teaching a class. But I tell them, I said, you injure somebody, I'll put on my gear and I'm going to start sparring with you and show you how it feels. I said, it's not necessary to do, but if you go to our fight classes, that's a different game. But these guys, they sign up for it and they tell each other also, okay, this is the time, okay, go a little less now. There's no egos in my gym. If something goes too hard, you simply tell your guy. It's not about, I'm afraid of you. No, sorry, that was hard. Tone it down a little bit, But when other people come in and they see my guys spar, they go, dude, they're crazy. I said, but if you really look, I said, nobody gets injured because they know each other and they know where to hit and how to hit. So it looks, for the outside, it always looks like it's very dangerous. You're going to get hurt. But that's only in bad gyms. If you Google a gym and you do some Google searches and you look for reviews and you find a good person and you take the first class, it's always free, the first class, and just feel it out and how it feels, go do that. Now, that is hand-to-hand. But unfortunately on the street, there's a lot of weapons involved nowadays as well. So then I would say go to a Krav Maga gym. The organization I like is Krav Maga Worldwide. My buddy is the owner of that, and I'm not saying that because he's the owner. It's because their system is really bulletproof. That's a system that constantly updates. They're in direct contact with all the military, with CIA, FBI, Mossad, I mean, you name it. And if new things come along, certain moves that are changed a little bit, they will know immediately because they know these guys personally. And that's really good for knife and gun defenses, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you're lucky to find a really good Krav Maga gym that also has an MMA program, that will be hitting gold. That I would suggest to do that. The Krav Maga is nice because you can also, there's a belt system. You can put your kids in there. They're going to start feeling confident. They will teach them submissions. They will teach them gun and knife defenses, choke defenses, all that stuff. And then if they have a fight program on the side, now they can spar as well. And once you start sparring, and full contact sparring, and that doesn't mean knock each other out, but you are allowed to hit everywhere. That's when you really grow as a fighter. Yeah,
no, it's awesome. There is something to be said about knowing that you can take a punch and you'll be okay. No, it's great answer. Great advice there. I want to jump into a little bit about your faith here as we're kind of winding down. I saw that you're a Christian, and you've said yourself that you're a big man of faith, a very religious guy. How does that influence? How does it influence your decisions when you were a fighter, and how does it influence now your decisions as an actor? I mean, are there certain roles that you would take in that kind of stuff?
Oh, well, I have to say, 5 years ago, I got pulled back into the faith. I was a Catholic, I was baptized, did communion, did everything, but I lost the faith. And I got pulled back into a story 5 years ago with somebody who explained how the world started. And it was amazing, this story to read. Actually, he made a book of it now. It's The Leaf Fell from the Tree by Leo Severino. If you read that book, that's the book they should have in schools, because once you teach it like that, you go like, okay, this is the design we've been put on this planet. There is a God. That's how it starts. And from there on, I just got interested because I was always like other people. Oh, pedophile priest, pedophile this, blah, 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 blah. I was just repeating what other people say. But I never dove into it. And once I started learning into it, I realized it's the opposite is true. It's completely the opposite. And suddenly I got so invested in it. You have no clue what I do for it. I mean, I do a lot of work for the faith, and the way I feel the last 5 years, the way I am for my family, for everything stopped. Profanity stopped. Everything. I control my drinking. I was an out of control person. I was so crazy when I was fighting. I was never a violent person. Yeah, if you want to fight, you're going to get it. But I was never picking fights. I was never doing bad things. But, I was just getting drunk, party time, jumping on the bar, dancing, always the happy guy. And, which sometimes for your wallet is not good, because if I would be drunk, I would, everybody around. And then the next day I would get the credit card statement. They go, oh, no, what did I do? $1,500 or something, something crazy.
Yeah.
But that all changed when I got back into the faith and when I started learning about it. And now it's like I want it. Like I wake up in the morning. I wake up at 5. I'll do my whole prayers, everything before that. I'm at 6:30. I'm doing Mass a.m. Then I come back. I read more about it, and it's so. I'm so drawn to it because all the answers are literally there. They're really there. I wish that people would give it a little time. I tell people, go 3 months. Read about it for 3 months. If you don't like it, throw it away. But you have to understand that if you don't believe it right now, but if it is true, this is the biggest thing in your life. There is nothing bigger in your life. We're here on this planet for a blink of an eye compared to what it's out there. That's the rest of your lives. I mean, that's a big chance you're taking about saying it is not there, because if it is there, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So just give it a chance. And unfortunately, everybody knows better now. And people, that's what they're doing. They don't need to do it. Hey, I'm my own boss. It's cooler to be that guy and to step away. And that's why they like outlaws. People like outlaws. That's why when you have movies like Natural Born Killers, that people gravitate towards those movies. These are killers. The psychopaths, but people love to see it because they jump outside the box. And I think that's what happened when the scientists came with the whole one cell thing and the Big Bang theory and all that stuff, which the Big Bang, it happened, but it's God who did that. But the one cell thing, to me, that sounds ludicrous. To me, that's the most insane thing. Now they're backpedaling. Now it's suddenly, there's 164 cells. How do you know, dude? There's 164 cells billions of years ago. Come on, wake up. How did a cell start? Did it become a bag of skin first? Where did the bones came? When did the brain came? How did it feed itself? How did it breathe? How did it stay alive? Was there a heart? Also, there were veins. How did the veins came? Really start thinking about it. And if you think then that they come from one cell, I think you're a complete idiot. I think 100%. Before I got back into the faith, I said my vision of how we got on this planet was that we put ourselves here. And they say, how is that possible? We from the future put ourselves here. That was what I thought. If we talk about aliens, I truly believe it's simply us from the future, because there is no time and space outside Earth. So whatever happens there, it's way different than it is here. So for me to make the leap that we put ourselves here to God put ourselves here, that was a very easy little jump to make. And especially after that talk that I had, the leaf fell from the tree.
Man, that's awesome. And I'll have conversations with guys sometimes, and they'll ask, why does it matter if I believe in a higher power? Why does it matter if I believe in God? And I want you guys to listen to Bas for a second there, because this is the reason why. Not just his passion, but I want you guys to hear that it radically changes the way you see everything. The way you treat your wife, the way you treat your kids, the way you view your responsibility in terms of your career. All of these things go through this sort of filter of our worldview of how do we see why we're here, what this is all about. And when the foundation is that we're here for a purpose made by a loving creator, if that's our foundation, then it absolutely changes everything else.
It's you start thinking about that later in life. It's always like that. Once you're competing and going through life in the beginning and you're fully focused on what you're doing, for instance, fighting, the focus is all on that, and you forget all about the other things. I always tell people, fighting it's a one-man sport. It's not a team sport, but it is a team sport, because without your training partners and your coaches and your manager and everybody else, you cannot do it. So it's a very selfish sport as well. And then once you stop competing and you start looking back and you hear other fighters, I had that show Inside MMA on TV for 9 years, and you start talking to fighters who are in their peak, and then you recognize that they are doing the same thing that you did. And you go like, wow, it's kind of weird. It's very rare to find somebody who really starts giving back to people right away, while they're still competing as well. And I think I was always okay, but I think I could have started that a little sooner, but always better late than never. And I think the faith had a lot to do with that, with me coming back to the faith. But now when I look back, I'm really, really happy. What I've done over the years, how many interviews I did, how many emails I wrote to parents or to kids who have a skin disease and asthma, or parents who have skin disease and asthma, the same things that I grew up with, And then when you start realizing, and you get all the letters of the fan mail, and I have a whole bag full of letters, you did something good, and it's a good feeling. And just thinking back about time, this is something I mentioned a lot as well. Like every time, and I still have this till this day, when I pump gas in the car, I'm always feeling blessed that I can fill it up. You always think about your time back in Holland, that you could fill it up for $5.35, or guilders for that matter at that time, that you couldn't fill it up.
Yeah.
You have only a certain amount. So once you start counting your blessings and going back in life and see what you did with it, and you did something good with it, I think that's the goal in life.
I think you're absolutely right. And, we talk sometimes on this podcast about success versus significance. A lot of people focus on success, and they try to measure it based on the amount of money that they have and that kind of stuff. But when you're living a life of significance like you're doing, and you're making an impact on other people, you really do feel that the significance is really the success that you've been looking for. And man, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate talking to you. And guys that are out there listening, I know you want to get in touch with what Bas has going on. You can head over to my site, wolfandiron.com/Bas. That'll take you to this podcast. You'll see all the show notes, and you'll have all the links out there, how to get in touch with Bas Rutten. Well, I just want to say thanks again for being on the Wolf and Iron podcast and for this great conversation.
You're very welcome, Mike. Thank you for having it. I had a great time.
Well, there you have it, men. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media networks. And look, if you got something out of this, make sure another guy does too. Share the episode and make sure it gets in front of the guys that need to hear it the most. Until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.